Well, good morning, Brickheads. Happy Wednesday to you. Hey, it's midweek. You know what that means? It's a Wild Card Wednesday, and welcome to what I am deeming probably one of my most important, vital Lego podcasts of all time. Well, maybe not, but I gotta be honest. This is going to be a big one. I am really passionate about this subject, and so I am excited to talk about all of the rules that have changed and have been broken, if you will. But yeah, we'll get into that. But before I do, as always, thank you for listening. You know, whether you're listening in on your favorite podcast platform or you're a visual person and you like checking it out on the YouTube page, I really appreciate it. It has been a big week in terms of the podcast, more listeners than ever. And I got to tell you, last week's YouTube videos certainly, I think, struck a chord, both positively and negatively. And so, but you know what they say, even bad news is good when it comes to exposure, right? This is why people do terrible things to get their clicks. Well, yuck. I don't want to be that person ever. I want to remain positive, but I also want to be a realistic person. So I will just tell you that in advance, and I appreciate you. So, you know, where do we go from here, right? Anyway, today is, like I said, a Wild Card Wednesday, and the topic is about an extension of last week's videos, and it all centers around Bricklink Series 5 release. And so I think I should preface all this with, first off, I've said thank you for listening. Secondly, if you are a long-time listener, I do want to apologize if you have ever listened to this podcast and made financial decisions based solely on this podcast. That is not the point of this, and I have said it before. You know, I don't know the future. I am not a hardcore Lego analyst, investor. There are people out there that do a lot better jobs than I do. I will say I follow it very closely. I do my research and I invest myself, but I always like to preface by saying I am a collector before an investor. And some of the comments I got on some of last week's episodes, specifically the one with the news and rumors where if you tuned in on YouTube, the thumbnail was Lego is killing me. Or maybe it's not. I don't know. That's how I did it. And yes, that's a little clickbaity, but I did it because I am both loving Lego all of the time. I think I love Lego more now than ever, but I think maybe because I'm so entrenched in it, I hate it more than ever. And there's these conflicting emotions. And so one of the things that always has been getting me really excited lately, because maybe it's new, is that Bricklink Designer Program. And yeah, I get it. It's been out since 2021, but the hype around that is different than just going to the Lego store and seeing, say, the new summer releases, right? And so, you know, when I talked about sets for both collecting and investing, one set in particular I talked about was Adventures in Transylvania. And I was like, this is your last sure thing. It's like, if you're going to buy a set to invest in and maybe resell for a profit, that's probably going to be your best bet. And I wasn't wrong based on the old rules. But, you know, before I get into those specifics, I should tell you, just to justify, because some people out there, I think they watched a minute of the video and they're just like, this guy's doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's just an investor and he's getting what comes to him and whatever. Listen to the whole episode, and by the time you're done listening to this whole thing, if you still disagree with me, let me know in the comments. But from an investing versus collecting standpoint, in 2025, so far I've bought 19 Lego sets. That's around $1,500 that I've spent on Lego this year. I have sold one for profit. So I've made about $150 off that singular Lego set. It was a great deal. I loved it. And it was $150 that I'm using directly to go back to buying more Lego. That's why I invest. I don't invest to make a profit or a living. I have a job for that. That actually, what I say, pays the bills. But every profit I make off a Lego set I sell just goes back to more collecting. In 2024, I actually bought 53 sets. and that was about $4,000 in Legos. So yeah, Lego likes me. I am not the bad guy. I'm not the enemy in terms of being a consumer. I'm probably in that 1% of consumers for Lego. I am its main demographic. They like me a lot. I buy a lot of their product. I review a lot of their product, and I promote a lot of their product. Now, because I do all that, I am giving myself the right to be critical of their product on occasion. Okay. And so that's that. In 2024, I sold 0 sets. So again, I'm a collector, not an investor. But having said that, what is the situation? Well, the situation was last week, Tuesday, I want to say maybe June 10th, we had the Bricklink Designer Series 5 release. And I had again said over and over in the weeks leading up to it, Adventures in Transylvania and probably Thieves of Tortuga, probably, but you could buy those sets. It's limited to 2, and you could buy one for yourself and sell one for profit. Yeah, that's good. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Well, 48 hours before release, Lego, because Bricklink is an extension of Lego, so I'm just going to say Lego put out a notice that said, due to the high demand, basically the hype surrounding the release of Series 5, we are fluctuating that 30,000 set limit because Bricklink, the designer program, once upon a time, it was only like 2,500 sets before it was owned by Lego. And then when they did like their 2021 Invitational, it was 10,000 sets. That's what it was limited to. Now it's limited to 30,000 sets, which is still a very limited exclusive number of Lego sets for the designer program, which I argue is a good thing, and I will explain why in a bit. But Lego said, we are upping it. We are going to fluctuate the number based on that hype, based on that demand. And so fast forward to that day, and it released. And just quickly, Adventures in Transylvania hit the 3,000 mark because it has to have 3,000 pre-orders to get fully funded. It was fully funded in the first 5 minutes. The first 5 minutes, y'all. Like, it was funded pretty much immediately. The fastest Lego set in the designer program ever to be funded. So I actually put out a little short and was like, listen, y'all, it's gone up for sale. Don't forget. It's going fast. You may want to get on this, letting you know. And then I finished that short, and then I watched it for a little bit longer. All of the sets were funded in the first 15 minutes. And then, going back to Adventures in Transylvania, that bad boy was 2/3 funded in the first hour. And then something strange happened, and lo and behold, I shouldn't say it's strange because they told us they were doing it, but you saw the line move. It was no longer at 30,000 sets. You didn't actually know, but if you went in and you inspect it, if you go into their website and actually right click and hit inspect, you can look at basically the code that's being written for that, do a little math, and lo and behold, they had upped the threshold for Transylvania to 40,000 sets. Tortuga, Mushroom, and the Popcorn trailer, those were all up to 34,000 sets. The antique shop was still at 30 at the time. But I was like, oh, okay, well, we got some more sets for sale, so be it. And so you watch it, and that line fills, and I would say 4 or 5 hours in, it's more than 3/4 of the way full. I don't pay attention to it. I go about my day. I'm at work, whatnot. Well, I get home that evening, and I look at it again, and the line is lower. Like, we're not even to the 3/4 part anymore. And so you go back in there and you actually look at it again, doing the math. They upped specifically Adventures in Transylvania to 50,000 sets. Now, I haven't looked at it since. I don't know if it's gone up since then. But what I'm telling you is they have almost doubled the amount of Adventures in Transylvania sets. Tortuga, I believe, went to 40,000. What does that mean? Well, it means it's still for sale. Like, literally as I record this, which is a few days ahead of its release, it's still up for grabs, which is good. If you're a collector, if you really like these sets and you have had your head under a hole and not been paying attention to the Bricklink Designer Series program, You're like, oh, hey, this set's still available. Cool, I can get it for retail price. And that is good if you're a collector in that moment. It's great. Like, yeah, it's an immediate win. Like, your dopamine hit is there because instead of missing out, because everybody hates to miss out, that is a natural fear of life, bam, we're a part of it. Cool. And like I say, it's still available. And what I started to argue is that's not a good thing. Like, that's not actually great. And I think that's where people were getting upset with me, particularly, is because they're just like, what, you're not a collector, you're a scalper is what you are. You just want to buy sets to sell to make money and rob people of their hard-earned cash. No, doofus. I'm just saying, like, if that's your point on this, you are very much looking at the short term. And my goal is to look at the long term. Because here's the thing. The majority of you are casual listeners or casual Lego collectors. I have gotten into the weeds, okay? Like, I am in the nitty gritty. I am not the most hardcore mocker. I am not the most hardcore Lego YouTuber out there. But I will tell you, I do my research and I follow trends, and I have been following Lego more closely than ever over the last 365 days. And really for the last 15 plus years. And so, like I say, I'm into the weeds in this, and I'm just like sitting there going, is this a good thing? Because really what we're talking about is the hype. Okay, it's not that it's available. It's not that I don't want anybody to miss out on something. I don't want you to not get the set you want and then go to have to pay some reseller an additional $100 or $200 for this set. You know, that Sleepless Nights Castle in Series 1, man, it's really expensive if you want to get your hands on it. The new Schwanstein Castle wannabe set that was in the original Bricklink, you know, you're going to pay $1,000 if you want to get your hands on that. That always sucks to miss out on it. But, you know, if we move the line and we up our numbers of sets, will we still keep the hype that goes along with the Bricklink Designer Series program? Because I have argued this already, and actual Lego investors have argued this as well. People aren't investing in this series anymore. People aren't spending their money on it to resell it, which is part of your initial sales. The good, let me look at this at two ways. There's good news and there's bad news. And let me get you into the bad. The bad news is bigger, obviously, but here's the good news. The one really good thing they did do is they lowered it from a month to 2 weeks. And that's important because this means, you know, 90% of sales for these Bricklink Designer Program series sets, they're in the first 7 days. 90%, first 7 days. And then they were waiting another 3 weeks to get that last little bit. And so they're like, no. We're going to shorten this down to 14 days. That cuts their lead time 2 additional weeks and lets them know what they're going to need to make. And I think that is great. I think it should be a 2-week window, absolutely. Because if you can't get your act together in 2 weeks, well, I don't know what to tell you. But that's pretty much the only good news. The bad is this, no matter how much you hate a scalper, you know what people don't talk about is the fact that Lego in and of itself is a scalper in many ways. You know, people don't get angry at Lego because they're the company. They're the big dog, right? And you don't get mad at the company for charging this. You just say, oh, it's too expensive and blah, blah, blah. And you know, tariffs or inflation and all that stuff. And it just all comes together. And Lego has to charge this amount of money to make their bottom dollar. Lego is not hurting for cash, y'all. It had like $10 or $11 billion in revenue last year alone. It is the largest toy company in the world. It makes plenty of money to do whatever it needs to do. And so people also need to talk about the fact that it was Lego that read the room and said, this is going to sell. So we need to make more copies of it so they can make more money on it. The hand, the profit went from the reseller to Lego. Is that a good thing? I don't know. Maybe. You may like that. You may be like, well, yeah, Lego deserves the money because then that makes it so they can put out more sets. In theory, for sure. But if you're like me, I'm not really an investor, but what am I doing with my profits? I'm just using it to buy more Legos, so the money is going back to Lego no matter what. And I don't know, I'm always more for the little guy rather than the big corporation. I guess that's just where I stand on it. But the bigger thing to me, again, it goes back to supply versus demand and overhyping the hype train. These to me are the two biggest negatives. And let me take you back, right? First, let's get away from Lego for a second, because you got to have context for why I think the way I think. And I am not just a collector of Lego. I love collectible cards. I collected a whole lot of comics growing up. I have a coin collection. I collect rocks and minerals. Guys, I'm just a collector. There's those personalities out there that just want to collect things. That's me. And I just gravitate towards, I want a complete collection, or I want to expand my collection. When DVDs were hot, I still have hundreds of DVDs. Yes, I can stream it all, but yeah, I just like my DVD collection. Isn't that weird, right? So I'm a collector, and so one thing I remember quite well, very much etched in my brain, is the late 80s, early 90s comic book, hype. People thought they were going to get rich and retire off comic books. If you're a Gen Xer or a Zennial like myself, you'll probably remember this. And what a cool time to be alive for a collector, right? Because if you were a collector, you're a kid like me, you're just like, you're getting the latest X-Men comic. Oh, now they have X-Force. Cool. All right, now they got X-Factor. Cool. Well, actually, X-Factor came out before X-Force. But then something magical happened, right? If you were an X-Men collector, you were like, Uncanny X-Men 281, great set. Oh, here comes Bishop in 282. But you know what they did? They split it off because X-Men broke into two teams. And instead of just putting both teams in the same comic, no, friend. They were not only just going to have Uncanny X-Men, they were going to have X-Men. X-Men #1 all over again. I want to say it was August of 91. And this comic, there were 5 different cover variations. Oh man, it was so cool. And if you bought all 5 cover variations, they went together in one long, beautiful piece of artwork where the new X-Men team were fighting Magneto, which is very reminiscent of the original October 1963 X-Men comic, right? It was so good. And again, speculators, collectors, and key here, the speculators and investors were like, this is easy money, baby. Yeah, it's a $5 comic, but give it a couple years and it's going to be a $30 comic. Give it a couple more years, it's going to be a $100 comic. Because look at what these comics did in the 60s. Well, here's the deal. The comics in the 60s were not in demand. The people who collected them, they read them and they used them and they tore them up and they used them as they bent the pages and they did all sorts of things with them because they were collected by kids and they destroyed them. That's what kids did with comics, right? And so the October 1963 X-Men #1, there's just not that many of them. I mean, there's enough out there, but there's just not a lot of these covers. We go back even further to something even rarer, Amazing Fantasy 15 with Spider-Man. Hardly any of those. That comic was on the out. People weren't collecting it. So it's a very rare comic. That's why it's valuable. It's not just because it's the first edition of Spider-Man. Yes, it's an iconic Marvel character, but there's just not that many of these copies out there. So that's why it's so much. Fast forward to that X-Men #1 1991 comic that had all 5 variations. It is the most widely printed comic of all time. There are 8.2 million of these copies. It is oversaturation. Do you know how much that comic is worth today? It's really worth what you're going to pay for it. And what I tend to say is it's really not worth the paper it was printed on. If you go to a comic book store, you can probably pay, again, list price for it, $5. And if you go back for inflation, you're actually buying it cheaper now than you were in 1991. And here's what happened. Because of the oversaturation and because of the gimmicks, like there was so much more focus on holograms on the covers or metal covers or just fancy gimmicks for comics, and they didn't focus on quality. You had both of these things coalesce with each other, right? Oversaturation, overproduction with a poor product, and everything busted. It all busted. And from 1993 to 1997, 2/3 of comic book stores in America went out of business. And the comic book industry, yes, there's a whole cinematic universe out there. I get all of that. But the actual comic book sales, comic book industry, those comic book stores have never recovered to that same level of hype as they had in the early 90s. That's just a simple fact. It just is what it is, right? And this is why I look at this and go, are we headed in that direction? Albeit it is much smaller, right? It is a much smaller comparison to, Steve, there's not 8.2 million Lego sets up there for the Bricklink Designer Program. It's only an additional 20,000 sets. That's true. But where does this stop? And do they stop before the hype runs out? Because part of these sales are based on not only people loving the set, but the ingenuity of the program, the quality of the designs and the designers, and just the overall product that they are going to get, which they feel is exclusive and unique to their collection. That's why people want it. I have a lot of sets. I have 700 plus sets. And looking around right now, I know there's a lot of people out there, when I look at YouTube, all of their collections look just like mine. And that's okay. I'm fine with it. But sometimes I look at some of those unique sets and I go, not many people have this one. When I look at my Lego Bricklink safe or my mountain windmill, I'm like, this is an official Lego set, but this is one of the things that makes my collection more unique. And that's kind of cool. And I also think that's why people do mocks. They like the uniqueness of it. They like the creativity of creating something that is just theirs. It's not everybody has their hands on it. And so there is something to be said for that. Now, granted, you can't go completely overboard with it because we talked about oversaturation, meeting the masses on one end, where you have the other end of the spectrum. And I think currently, say Pokemon cards and trading cards especially are a great example of the complete opposite end of the spectrum, which is just as bad, if not worse. So, for example, Pokemon cards. Within the last year and a half, and especially since post-COVID, collectibles in general and Pokemon cards in general have been really, really hyped. People like Leonhardt on YouTube and collectors like that, he don't have bad intentions. I think Leonhardt's a really good guy, but he has done his part to hype up a product that he loves, and it's gotten to astronomical levels to where they're just like, oh, well, you are willing to spend $500 on one pack of 9 cards that may or may not have a shiny Bulbasaur in it, or albeit a first generation Charizard, which you're going to lose your poop over because it's now $100,000 card, and that's also not okay, because it's one of those things where they're like, let me say, a follower, a YouTuber that I really like a lot. He does the, should I open it or should I keep it sealed? He has these little shorts that he puts out, and they're really great shorts. And he'll talk to you about, I just bought this jungle booster pack set for $200. And then he opens it and he doesn't get anything. And basically the total sum of his cards is about $7. That's not okay either. Or like basketball or football cards. These are even worse. Have you ever heard of Panini Flawless? Like, there are other collectors that I like to watch on YouTube who love Panini Flawless. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. If you haven't, YouTube it. It's a little absurd, and a lot of them honestly buy it so they can open it for the YouTube clicks. And I get it. That's the way they're going to make money, is what it is. I'm not going to judge. But a pack of Panini Flawless Football Hobby Box is $7,400 currently at Amazon.com. $7,400 in this pack for football. You've got 6 autograph cards, 2 memorabilia cards, a gem card, and an additional gem or relic card. Y'all, we're talking like 9 cards. We're talking like 9 cards in a pack for $7,400. They include autograph cards, which are hand-signed, authentic autographs, which is cool, right? Rookies and legends. I mean, who doesn't want a Steph Curry or a Tom Brady card with a patch of his like actual jersey that he wore in a playoff game? That's pretty cool. It's a one of one. It's the only one in existence. Memorabilia cards, that's what I was talking about, like patches or jerseys. Gem cards, this is a base card where they put like a diamond in it or another precious stone, which it's so like astronomically dumb to me. Like, oh, this card right here, the reason this card's expensive is because there's a diamond in this card. The reason this Lego Death Star actually cost, this one's $1,000, but the limited edition diamond Death Star is $20,000 because it has 10 carats around it, perfumes, bottles of liqueur are definitely like big on that, where they're like, oh, here's the bottle, but we put a giant gemstone on it. That's actually why it's worth a lot. Luxury packing. The boxes are often designed as briefcases, which once you unpack it, what are you going to do with a briefcase? Like, really? My wife gets mad at me because I store Lego boxes flat. If I buy a briefcase for 9 cards, but it adds to the exclusivity of it. And then they're usually serial number, and here's key. Low quality make them highly collectible and rare. There are a lot of these cards that are 1-for-1s. There's only one card in existence, and people hunt these cards. They're like, I'm going to spend $20,000 on this briefcase of Panini Flawless in hopes that I can get the 2017 Steph Curry rookie card. Because if I can get that one card, I can sell it for $1 million+. And that's the hunt. And that's the whole thing about it. And to me, that is an area that I never want to see Lego go to. And so you have a balance. I mean, let's talk about this to wrap things up, to bring it all together. The rant, Steve, how do you bring it all together? Is that, what does the future hold? Like, where do we go from here? And to me, I'm like, there needs to be a balance. You can't oversaturate. You can't make too much supply that will outweigh your demand. You can't stop innovating. You have to continue to look at unique ways to not only, appease the customer, but obviously take care of your bottom line so that you can continue to exist as a company. If you're watching on YouTube, actually next to me right now, I have a Lego book, and I usually put a Lego set next to me, but I thought it was very appropriate to put a book that I've been enjoying. It's called Brick by Brick. It's written by David C. Robertson. It's called, like I say, Brick by Brick, How Lego Rewrote the Rules of Innovation and Conquered the Global Toy Industry. And in that, we talk about tipping points, right? If you're a Malcolm Gladwell fan, another book I really love by Malcolm Gladwell is called The Tipping Point. The tipping point talks about there is a moment, there is a thing like this, you call it the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? Why do they have that saying? Because you can have a lot of this stuff happen over and over and over again, and eventually there is going to be a tipping point, a thing that takes it beyond it coming back, right? Beyond it getting fixed, beyond it ever staying the status quo. And I really worry that this designer program is a microcosm of Lego in general. I really do, because the designer program, the hype for it is huge. The designers are amazing, and the sets that they're producing are fantastic and honestly better than a lot of what Lego is producing right now, because Lego is producing, let's be real, they're producing a lot of crappy sets right now. They do have some bangers. They have some amazing sets out there, like the Mario Kart set, the T-Rex. Those are incredible sets for sure. But for every Mario Kart and for every T-Rex set, you're going to get 5 or 6 janky sets that they know is going to sell well, because there's a 5-year-old out there that doesn't have discerning tastes. That's just how it is. But I'm afraid it's going to reach that tipping point where they are going to overproduce. They are not going to focus as much on the design and the hype of the series, and they're going to get away from that so that they can increase their profit and their bottom line, and then by doing so, it will kill the demand. You know, it's called fatigue. We see that in things like the MCU universe is a great example of this. Do you remember when Avengers Endgame came out? It was the craziest movie, the craziest hype we'd ever seen, right? And they have never been able to get back to that. And they talk about the Marvel or the comic, cinematic universe fatigue. People are tired. And you just never want your product to get to that point. And I'm afraid Lego, with the amount of production that they're putting out there, we may be getting to that point. And that also works hand in hand with how they are pricing things. You're paying a lot of money for a, most of the time, quality product. Like, the bricks are always quality, but the end result of the design is not obviously always quality. The August release that is coming out of these Star Wars sets, currently some of the prices per piece are upwards of 20 cents. Now, we don't know if that's going to stay like that, but you're going to price out your people, and especially if you're not doing designs that are worth that price, people are going to stop buying. And I think, again, it is not as much about Bricklink Designer Program, but again, like I said, it's more of, that is a microcosm of what is happening with Lego in general. And going back to Brick by Brick, this is a book about innovation in the company. It's not really about the Lego brick itself. It is about the company of Lego and how they were king of the world 4 decades ago. And then 2 decades ago, they were right on the brink of not existing. Like, they were going bankrupt. They were not producing. They tried to be innovative, but they didn't know how. And it took a lot of things to come together for them to rethink how that company should operate, to go to currently today, they are back to being king of the kingdom. But it's very, very precarious, and it's very easy to build your kingdom on a house of cards, and that can fall at any single time. You know, Lego, if you talk to them in the 80s, in the early 90s, they didn't have to do a darn thing they didn't want to do because no one could touch them. 10 years later, like I said, they were getting ready to go out of business. Here we are, we're back to the top. Will they stay at the top? It's all about the long term. You can argue with me till you're blue in the face that this is a win for collectors today. When I research, when I'm talking about Lego, I love it. I love this product so much. And I'm not just looking at today. Sometimes you have to be willing to take the L for today so that you can win the longer war, the longer battle. And to me, that is, will Lego continue to innovate? Will they focus on product quality and not quantity? And will they basically be able to keep pricing competitive to keep people want to continue to buying the product. We got a $1,000 Death Star coming out here in just a few months. Will people buy it? I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll see when images come out. And then finally, last but not least, I'm going to end with this. If you are an investor, don't invest in Bricklink Designer Series. Investing in Lego is hard. It's always been hard. It is always a series of ups and downs, and the margins are very, very small. But with this change, even if you're a casual collector like myself, unless I desperately want that set for myself, I'm not going to buy the set. And in fact, Adventures in Transylvania, I ended up buying it right before they upped the threshold again. If I could go back, I probably wouldn't buy it now because I liked it and I kind of want it. But then at the same time, I'm like, it's $370, so I probably shouldn't because I want to spend money on other Lego. And so maybe I could resell it and maybe make $60, $70 in profit, which I could use back on Lego. Looking at it now, I probably wouldn't because it's a lot of money to have invested. It's a lot of space to have invested. And if Lego is going to continue to change the rules and change, the finish line, people aren't going to buy it. And if those investors, listen, whether you like it or not, those investors, those resellers are a part of that market. And when they stop buying, the demand goes down. And if the supply stays up, I don't think the Designer Series is long for this world. And I've actually thought about that a lot. We probably are almost to that point anyway. We really shouldn't go past much Series 9, Series 10. We do need a break because I've always thought it'd be cool to have a Designer Series 5 to 10 sets a year max, probably just 5. The Designer Series 2025, the Designer Series 2026. That keeps the hype train going. Because you got to ask yourself, would you be as excited about modular buildings if they released 3, 4, 5 modular buildings a year? I don't think you would. You like that they release one modular a year. You look forward to January 1st because you're like, what is the modular going to be? This is exciting. You talk about it and we spend an entire month speculating on just one singular modular building. And to Lego's credit, they've kept it at 1. The Winter Village, they've kept it at 1. You wouldn't be as excited about it if you're like, well, there's 87 of these sets now. What do I care? That's why collectors aren't buying Harry Potter like they were, because they're like, this is just a rehash of another old set. But kids are still buying it, so hence why they can still produce a lot of it. But I don't know. I'm just saying. I just think that's something that they should really consider, because I think 2025, and this is hard because it's easy to get in the comments and be like, you're wrong, because you have immediacy on your side. The hard part for me is we don't know if I'm wrong or if I'm right for another 2 or 3 years. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope it stays fresh. I hope it stays awesome because, again, I've said it before, I'm a huge Lego fan. I absolutely love Lego. It is a huge part of my life. It brings me joy, and I don't want it to go away. And I want to be able to get those sets just like you do. But I don't want there to be too much of a good thing, and especially if they change the rules to make their pockets full of more green. I'm just telling you, they're not looking out for you. They're not looking to get scalpers. They don't care about scalpers. If Lego cared about scalpers, they would fix their whole retirement system in general. Let's just put it out there. Lego has never given 2 squats about the resale market. They like the resale market. They like when a set becomes really expensive because then it becomes good marketing for them. So don't ever sit there and pretend that Lego is excited for you, the collector. They are excited to make money, to continue to push product because they are a business first, and they are in the business of making money. It's just as simple as that. My goal in talking to you about all of this today is, will they continue this trend or will it stop? Are we at the tipping point? History shows, especially for us collectors out there, there's a lot of examples that we can point to. I hope we aren't one of them. And last week, there's a lot of soul searching being done and a lot of opinions on both ends of the aisle. And speaking of opinions, leave them. If you've paid attention, I am 40 minutes into this conversation because that's how passionately I feel about it. But if you've paid attention all the way to the end, leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think I'm wrong? It's okay to disagree with me, and I'm fine with that. I love the discourse. I love having these conversations. I don't mind arguing. I mean, that's just it. I don't mind to argue, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to come at you with my logic. You may not agree with my logic, but that's just what I'm going to come at you with. I try to stay positive, and I will say if you leave me a comment, I would ask that you try to stay positive because I do still feel like this is a channel for everybody, and I don't want to get into anything negative, any curse words, anything derogatory whatsoever. But I do love the discourse, and I would also love your opinions. If you leave me a comment, I'll get back to you within usually about the first day or so. So let me know. Anyway, with that, I think I have definitely talked long enough. I appreciate you as always, especially if you made it through this whole one. If you're interested and you want a good read, if you like innovation, if you like business, if you like that theory in there on how businesses overcome or leadership models, this is a good book. Brick by Brick, again, by David C. Robertson, How Lego Rewrote the Rules of Innovation and Conquered a Global Toy Industry. Again, it's not about the brick, it's about the business, which is really, really important because the business is what funds the brick. So anyway, with that, I love all y'all. I hope you have a great rest of your week. And until Monday, when we come back and talk about, a whole nother slew of rumors and news, I'll just have to talk to you then. All right? Talk to you later. Bye-bye. All it's supposed to feel.